What would it look like if your workplace not only pushed you to succeed, but also protected your mental health in the process? Right now, 61% of Australian workers report experiencing burnout, which is the highest rate in the world. And in the US, nearly 3 out of 5 employees say burnout is affecting their job performance. Somewhere along the way, stress became normal, exhaustion became expected, and well being got pushed to the bottom of the priority list. But what if that could change? Today, I'm joined by Lauren and Jason, two leaders who've lived the cost of burnout and now flipping the script through their work with the thriving workplace and the workplace well-being. Lauren's story as a paramedic, Jason's as a teacher, show just how universal and urgent this issue is. So let me start here, guys. Welcome to the show.
Amazing. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Very excited to chat and to dive into this. It's such an important topic. The work that you guys are doing and how you're showing up, especially online, as I keep following along, is always getting me to think, which is why I'm very, very pumped for this. Quick question to both you, and you can handball it around. When did you first realize that burnout wasn't just part of the job, but a sign that something had to change?
Oh,
That's
what a
really
great
good
question. I think for me, if I was to go back to my teaching career, is I was sitting in a classroom one day and I remember it like it was just yesterday. And I had 3 different colleagues of mine come into my classroom at 3 different times of the day and just burst out crying because they had enough of the stress, the workload, but really it was more of the culture. It was that silent culture where in education where it's like, you've got to do all this work. You've got to meet the parent expectations. You've got to meet the expectations of the school as well. And they were just over it. They were just, I can't take this anymore. And to me, that was the point where I drew the line in the sand, where I said, okay, we've got to do something about this for sure. That was, in a short term, that was definitely mine.
Yeah, I guess mine's kind of similar. When I started out as a paramedic, I was really excited, obviously, to enter this new career. And I got into that because I wanted to help people. But it didn't take me too long until I realized that, for starters, we weren't really helping people. We were just picking people up and taking them to hospital, but that was all. We were picking up the same patients over and over again. And it's like, okay, something's not right here because there's no solution. We're not actually fixing anything. We're actually building on the problem because they're just getting more medications and their health is declining. So I saw the sort of effect, I guess, of stress on communities, but then I also saw the effects of stress on my fellow colleagues as well and paramedics. And similar, people we were doing 14-hour shifts and it was just told just to keep going and just get on with it. Like, being a paramedic is challenging, and especially at that time, I mean, I'm guessing it would still be very similar now. We're so short staffed and they were just putting pressure on us. So you'd have a radio and they would just ping you like, why are you still at hospital? Why are you doing this? Why are you not going to the next page? Why is it taking you so long to do this? And they were just constantly on you. And you'd go to the bathroom and you'd just be constantly tagged, and it was just ongoing stress. You just didn't have a minute to take a breath.
How did you manage that, Lauren? Because as you were saying that, I'm getting anxious. As you're saying, I'm getting pinged here. I'm going to the bathroom. I'm getting pinged. For me, I'm just like far out. Like, can you talk me through what was going through your mind every time you get that buzz?
Yeah, I think because obviously the job's quite stressful and you're going to different scenarios, and I was such a brand new paramedic, so I think naturally you put pressure on yourself because you want to perform. And I'm a high performer, and I know I get in my head at times that I want to perform at the best that I can, and I want to show them, my colleagues, that I belong there and that I am a great paramedic, right? So I already had that pressure. So going into scenarios, my brain's already switched on. And it has to be anyway, because you're going into houses in different community settings that can be potentially quite dangerous. So as soon as you walk through the door, your cortisol and adrenaline's through the roof, and you're having to be on and focused the whole time. And situations can change in seconds. And you have to be ready with your equipment, with your drugs and medications, and you have to know exactly how much you're administering. It's just so much is going on, and delegating tasks to other paramedics and listening to the leaders if there's some there, higher up paramedics. And then I think when you drop the patient off and you just want to take a moment to decompress, it's hitting your adrenaline and everything again because you're just not getting that moment to breathe. And it wasn't too far in, I thought, I can't do this that long. Like, this is crazy, as much as we're putting our lives on the line and we're putting our health on the line, we're also not allowed from the system and the organization to actually take a minute to look after ourselves and look after each other. Yeah, it was like we're getting hit by both ends.
It's crazy. Like, as you're saying that, I'm thinking about how can I relate that to every even in my own life, and I'm just thinking of like weight training, for example. You're under pressure where you're hitting some reps, but you always take your rest period, and then that's during the shift, during the
Yeah.
session, and then you take time off after where you get to recover. And it doesn't sound like, from your experience in the workplace, you didn't get that. And I know a lot of workplaces don't give people the moment to decompress, gather their thoughts, and then come back in a, I guess, a more recharged and re-energized position to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. And recovery is so important. I think it's something that can be really overlooked. And I love the analogy that you use, Lockie, in the terms of the gym. And I think people can relate to that. And, we talk on, high performing sports and endurance athletes. And you look at people like LeBron James, and recovery is so important for him. He prioritizes recovery above everything else. He probably has the least amount of time on the court actually practicing compared to other people in his field, but he performs at a higher standard and is better than everyone else because he prioritizes recovery and spends so much time and money on actually making sure that his mind and body is fully recovered and ready to go again.
That's such a good point. And that for me, that raises like intensity versus maybe consistency. I think when you're a bull out of a gate, especially starting in a new career, and I notice this a lot, especially in a lot of the men that I work with, we want to prove ourselves. And I think just people in general, you mentioned it, Lauren, you wanted to prove yourself to your colleagues. So you're prepared to go above and beyond, and just the intensity in which you were working and what you were doing wasn't sustainable for the long run. Yet it's probably expected as you sort of maybe started easing up, people are going, hey, what are you doing? Like, you aren't doing what you were doing, or are you okay because your work ethic's not as high? And it's like, yeah, I'm not okay. I'm freaking tired, man. Like, I need a breather. And it's just become expected.
Yeah, absolutely. Became the norm, I think, to just keep going.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's almost like that internal battle. It is expected, but at the same time, is it expected that you run yourself to the ground? And I think that's the line where, it's starting to shift in workplaces now, but it's shifting so slowly, not at the rate that we need to. And yeah, so I think that's why, one of the big reasons why we're here and making noise in this space to say, hey, we've got to make this line move quicker to ensure that we're looking after, Australians and literally the entire world.
Because the problem is, when you suffer from something like burnout, it can take you so long to bounce back or to fully recover. And it's something that can play on for years. Your immune system's taking such a hit, so you're so susceptible to getting health issues in that way, but then also chronic health issues, because chronic stress is putting pressure on your system as your body, right? Like your heart and your cardiovascular system. And I saw it in the community, and you talk to people and you'd be like, wow, you're in your 40s or 50s and you're on a medication list as long as your arm, and you're thinking, what is going on? And if you think about it, it's because of all the stress that they're under, like financial stress, work stress, family stress, and it just builds in all areas of their life, is building this high level of stress, and your body can't take that. That is not natural. And then they get put on medication, and then they have to be put on another medication to counteract the side effects of that medication. And then it's just an ongoing effect. And now they're on like 50 medications. It's insane.
A walking pharmacy. And I'd love to come back to talking about some strategies around that. But first, Jason, I guess as well, one thing that stood out for me about your story, you were actually working with young children, right? So you're influencing and shaping the direction of the next generation, which is such an important job and such a really, I think from my experience talking to teachers, it's not recognized enough just how important it is. You realized along the way that the leadership and how you were leading yourself wasn't going to be sustainable, and probably those young children are watching you go through burnout and the stresses. So for you in that experience, you said you had other colleagues walk in and break down in front of you, but was there a personal moment where you realized that something had to change for you?
Yeah, great question. I think, you touched on me teaching the next generation, and I was teaching the real young ones. So I was teaching prep year 1, year 2, which is that modeling phase. These children, when they're between 0 and 7, they're like sponges. Whether we know it or not, they are absorbing absolutely everything, the way that we show up, the way, obviously what we're teaching them, but the way we're interacting with other adults as well. They're absorbing all that information. So when we're at our wits' end, we're stressed, we're exhausted, and the students and the next generation are seeing that, they're thinking, oh, that's the normal way. That's how we interact with other people. And I saw it when I was, as a teacher, particularly when it was coming to that end of term when we've got to get all the assessments done, the report cards need to be written. And obviously the teacher stress levels are rising as well. The stress levels in the classrooms were also rising from the students, and they didn't know why. They were just following along. They thought it was normal. That to me was probably the big eye opener where I was like, okay, that's when we're it's a snowball effect. I'm showing up as this stressed human being, but now I'm infecting almost 30 young individuals in front of me with this stress. And to me, that was, I thought, a moment where I went, okay, I've got to take a step back. But then at the same time, I saw my colleagues burning out, but I would come home and see Lauren, who was burning out from a paramedic as well. She would come home from a shift, absolutely exhausted. Fair enough. It may have been a 12-hour shift, but then she had a couple of days off and she wasn't recovering. So it was that point where I saw, okay, my colleagues are going through this. Lauren's going through this as well. Something's got to shift, because it's not just in education. It's not just in the healthcare profession. It was then, you'd start talking to friends who are in complete other industries, and they're going through something similar, or they've got colleagues going through something similar. I thought, okay, this is almost like a silent pandemic almost. There's things happening, and it's like, what is Australia doing about this? And I thought that's where, it wasn't such a personal for me, but it was more of a, okay, I'm seeing everyone else going through this. I don't want to go through this. There's that great quote where you become the sixth person of the five people you hang around the most with. I don't want to be that, stressed out, burnt out person. I love being that happy, positive vibe as much as I can. And if I'm stressed, burnt out, exhausted, depressed, I'm not going to be able to do that. So that was sort of that line in the sand. It wasn't such a personal story for me, but it was more of the impact that I'm seeing with other people around me.
It shows that you care. Like, to me, it shows how much compassion and empathy you have for people, and the desire the fact that you uprooted a career that you'd studied for and were obviously passionate about to solve a bigger issue takes a special kind of person. So for you to be able to do that's really impressive. To then, obviously, that quote you just used, you're the sixth person of the five that you spend the most time around. The beautiful thing about you stepping up and I guess putting your hand up, you are then able to influence the five other people that you're surrounding yourself around, because you took, I guess, responsibility or self-leadership to direct the quality of your life and the quality of life of other people. So just them seeing what you're talking about, them watching how you're conducting yourself, that maybe, doing things differently in the relationships, it's like they're going to start modeling your behavior as well. I know it's not like when we're super young and we're like sponges, but we still do pick up those things, because I can imagine there are friends and colleagues in your life for both of you who may not say things to you, but they watch. And they're constantly taking away these things on how they can improve their relationship, whether it's because of stress management and all of those things. So I'd love to ask, obviously you're both in the space, you're a couple. So how did you, I guess, as you're starting to think about this consciously, what were some things that you did to make sure it improved your relationship and you weren't bringing that work stress home?
So is this before WPWI, when we were going through the burnout phase?
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
Let's do it before and after. I think that'd be cool to see the contrast.
Yeah,
Before
okay.
and after. Yeah, okay.
Before,
if we can.
Yeah, I'm thinking if I went back to before, I probably, to be honest, had not much of an idea of why, why we were so headbutting each other. And it wasn't until I started to really dive into some study around this where I realized, oh, okay, this is why. But before, it was definitely headbutting. I was taking work home and doing it from home. Lauren was coming home exhausted. And I was like, well, what is this? And we ended up almost living like two roommates. And then in some points, it was like ships in the night. We wouldn't see each other for a couple of days because of Lauren's shifts and things. So yeah, beforehand, it was a lot of headbutting, not realizing why we're like this. Where did that spark sort of go? That relationship sort of died off. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I think it's hard when you've got nothing left in the tank to be able to give to other people as well. Like, if you can't give for yourself and have that energy there, then you've got no energy for anyone around you. And I think in a relationship dynamic, because you feel fairly safe to be open and quite raw and honest with your emotions, it can seem like quite intense. And I know that I personally can be quite intense with my emotions, in terms of like I can flick from one emotion to the other. But then back then, I think I had no level of awareness about emotional regulation or nervous system regulation at all. So I would just come home and kind of, Jason would be my outlet, which I know isn't fair, but I think it's easier. Hey, when you've only got that one person when you come home, and you've bottled it up all day because you've been told to just keep going and you've not had a moment to decompress, that you're my decompress, but it ends up being quite intense. And I think after a while that can wear thin on the relationship, because you're not meant to be my counselor as much as you're meant to be someone I can lean on, but you're not meant to be the only person that holds everything. And also back then, gosh, we were so young, and I think we'd not really stepped into personal development or done any of this kind of work. So our level of awareness about anything was so low. And we weren't really on this health conscious journey either as much as we were interested, but I was heavily in the Western medicine world back then. So I was it was actually really strange, being honest. I felt like I was split into two, that I had this sort of holistic spiritual part of me that I had to shut down to then be a paramedic in the Western world. That's how I felt. And I kind of kept some of that a secret, that I like to dive into some of those sorts of things. But I thought that doesn't quite align with who my identity is at the time. And so it was very much Western medicine. But yeah, we didn't have the awareness that we do now.
And we didn't have the knowledge and the skills. Like, I remember going to a personal development and meeting this guy, and he started talking about masculine and feminine energy. And I was like, what on earth are you talking about? But then once I actually got to know him, and he explained it a little bit more, I went, okay, I totally get it. I can see why we're headbutting here, because it was that the polarity was completely off. And we won't go into masculine and feminine energy now, but that was a big turning point for me, to be able to go, okay, I actually need to step into the man who I need to be to show up for myself, but then show up for Lauren and now the business as well.
But then I was in my masculine a lot too, because I wanted to take control of something that I was so out of control. And I didn't have the space or time to actually decompress and be able to be in my feminine and feel safe. Like, my nervous system didn't feel safe at all. So how can I be in my feminine? And that just affects the relationship a lot.
So powerful, those things. And for those listening along who are, I guess, wanting to dive deeper, a really good book that's helped me and a lot of people that I'm friends with is The Way of the Superior Man. That really breaks that down. I felt like that gave me a roadmap into Amy's mind. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. And also helped me understand myself a lot. So really recommend that book
100%.
There as well. What about now? So obviously, fast track, you've done a bit of the personal development. You've got, I guess, stress levels under control. And I know, once again, there's always seasons where the stress will come back in. But what do you do differently within the relationship to help it thrive?
Yeah, I think it was important for us so we had that moment where we were both suffering. And then to provide a bit more context, I guess, to you, Lockie, and the listeners, I then had no menstrual cycles for 8 months. And I was suffering from migraines, mood swings, borderline depression, and it was a really dark time for me. And I remember getting blood tests and brain scans and all sorts of things done, because my doctor had no idea what was going on, because a few months before I had blood tests and everything was fine. All of a sudden I had no estrogen, no progesterone, was unreadable.
Wow.
Yeah, she said my hormones were worse than a 70-year-old. That's literally, I remember her saying that. And I remember coming out of that doctor's, it was insane. And I started crying. I was like, wow, I'm 23 and I've never been so scared that I'm out of control with my health, because I believe if you don't have your health, you have nothing. And I was really quite worried. I have no idea what's going on. My doctor's confused. And I was talking to my brother at the time, because he's in holistic health. He's a Czech institute trained practitioner.
Amazing.
Yeah. And he was like, wow, okay, Loz, like, if you don't do something about this, it's scary, because where can this spiral to? And I just remember him saying that and looking at me going, I'm worried about you. And I feel like you need to make a change, because where is this going to go? And I thought, wow, okay, if this gets worse, that's really scary, because I'm already pretty bad. So it was at that moment where I thought, okay, I need to make a change, because I'm, really worried where this can go. And I don't want to, go through extra health issues that I'm already going through now. So I turned to yoga and meditation, started diving into sort of holistic health. And it was that point where like you said, Jace, when you start to see things, you can't unsee it. So once I started to see the system and the sort of brokenness and the suffering and the pain that was happening within communities and also within my colleagues, I thought, I need to, step away and make a change. So I became a yoga teacher. And that's actually how I started. So I didn't actually jump straight into WPWI. I think there's a bit of a gap there. Where I just worked on myself for ages, we went into personal development. We did heaps of events, like full personal development junkie for
There was
like
a solid,
12 to 18 months, just
yeah.
sort of ripping ourselves apart, but in a beautiful way. And you stepping away from teaching, me stepping away from my career and going, let's just break away the layers. Let's start from the foundations and build ourselves back up, because we don't actually like who we've become. We don't actually like how we show up every day. We don't like our habits. Something's wrong here from deep within. And I believe that a lot of the burnout and the stress, as much as it's an environmental thing and, you know, an external thing, it's very much an internal thing. It's like, what is the mindset around this that is creating the stress? The lack of boundaries, the lack of, you know, the thoughts of, yes, I've got to show up perfect and I've got to get everything perfect. And that's putting pressure on you. There's so much around what creates stress and burnout. So I think going into that personal development, ripping ourselves apart, has now helped us now to build the level of awareness, because without awareness, you can't create change. And we're so much more aware now of our nervous systems and our mindset and everything along with that. Whereas before we had no awareness. And I think now we've got our own, you know, practices, and we keep ourselves as healthy as possible. And we've got health coaches and we've got mentors in our space around different things, whereas we never had any mentors before.
Yeah.
So I think that's helped us too. And we worked with that guy you spoke about, right? His name's Todd. He's actually speaking at the conference. And we worked with him for 12 months on just us as a couple, as a relationship, not business, not anything else, because we're so good at that, especially now. It's like, let's hire a business mentor, and we've got all this business strategy. And it's like, okay, but if, especially as we're in business together, if we don't work on our relationship, the business will fail. And as much as we thrive as a couple, our business will thrive even more. It goes hand in hand. So we worked with him for 12 months on, masculine and feminine energy, but also limiting beliefs, mindset, nervous system regulation, and all these different things. I think that's helped us now, because you can show up different and better and understand me, and I can understand you, and our communication's so much better. Even, you know, we have moments, of course, but then we go, oh, okay, we know what to do now. Like, and then we sort of laugh about it. Yeah. It's different.
I think, to summarize what Lauren was saying, then to come back to your question, you know, what do we do as a couple to ensure that we're thriving? I think first of all, it was the awareness. You know, we're now aware of where each other's triggers are and where our emotions are, like both of us. So I'm aware of my emotions, but I'm also aware of Lauren's emotions. And we know what to do in those sorts of times. So if I can see that Lauren's going into a stress state, it's like, okay, I need to pull back here a little bit, and I need to go to Lauren and go, okay, what can I do to support you through this? And it's just those little question techniques. It was definitely find a mentor to help with our relationship. That was another big one, but also just little things that we've implemented. So instead of, you know, we're working on the business, but then there's times where it's okay, we're now switching into relationship mode. So for example, every Wednesday night now, we don't work on business. We don't open the computer. It's time where we can connect. And it might be, you know, playing a board game. It might be doing a puzzle. It's something completely random that we don't normally do, but it's that time to connect and time to, you know, talk about us and our dreams as a couple rather than the business and what we do. So that's probably the 3 or 4 main things.
I love that. That was so cool. I would imagine when you're breaking yourselves down to build yourselves or rebuild yourself, it wasn't as easy as what you said. There would have been obviously more headbutting and some really confronting moments, but you guys continued to work through that and were committed to that. And I think a lot of people avoid that. I know I avoided it for years because I didn't want to have to accept certain things about myself and how I was showing up. I just wanted to put my head in the sand, so I'd turn to alcohol. Or I love that you guys did that together. I think that's so powerful because a lot of couples grow apart. You guys grew together, and you're only going to be better for that, you know, because of that experience. That's for sure. Why do you think burnout is? You know, you guys are obviously hosting events, and we'll talk about the big event coming up. And you're speaking to a lot of people in business, but why do you feel burnout and I guess stress across the workplace is becoming such a big problem in so many industries?
I think because as human beings now, with so much technology and so much noise around, we struggle to switch off. You know, you can pick up your phone and you can have a look at your emails. You can have a look at your text messages. You can get online on social media and see what everyone else is doing. As a human society, I feel like that's one of the biggest things. And I'm saying this because, you know, I still do struggle with, you know, notifications on my phone. It's like, oh, there's another ding. I wonder what that is. Attention. And there's a study that's been done where it's, you know, if you're on a task and then you get distracted, it takes 20 or so minutes to get back to that one task. It's just, yeah.
23 minutes, I think.
Yeah, it's
Crazy.
absolutely crazy. So to me, I feel like that's probably one of the biggest things. We get drawn at all hours of the night. If we're sending emails at a ridiculous time, whoever is going to get that email is going to get distracted and go, oh, okay, I should maybe respond to this. Or if they don't respond, they're thinking about it unconsciously. They're going to sleep thinking about that email that they've just read. And then when they get up, they go, why am I so exhausted? And they probably don't even realize that they've been ruminating about that email or about that notification, whatever it might be, for a little while. So for me, that's probably one of the biggest things.
It's a really interesting question because I feel like there's a lot to it. And at the same time, I think it depends on who you speak to. I think some people would go, oh, we're stressed as a society because we just keep going and there's so much to do and the workload's really high and all of this sort of stuff, But I believe it's a combination of things. I think there's a lot of stuff around the mindset and around limiting beliefs, like I touched on before, that really creates this level of stress. Like, why are you not creating boundaries? Which is touching on what Jason's saying. Because as much as it's both, right? The organization needs to have proper policies and protocols around protecting their staff, 100%. But at the same time, the individual also needs to set boundaries, also needs to be able to have a voice. And as much as that's challenging, I think it's a lot of internal work that needs to happen for you to be able to feel that you can speak up and that you have these difficult conversations, that you know what you value and you know what you stand for and you stick to that rather than be a pushover. There's a lot of people pleasing happening in the workplace. I think Jason saw it a lot, especially as teachers. Massive people pleasers as a whole, if I'm honest. Like, I'm just going to be rip the Band-Aid off. It's true. And I think we have these really cool conversations when we're doing our networking events, and it's amazing what you hear. And because we've been doing the work for a little while now, I'm not saying we're perfect, nowhere near, but we've got a lot of awareness, and you start hearing what comes out of people's mouths and you go, people pleasing. Okay. Interesting.
Yep.
Like, why are you doing that? Okay. That's not your workplace problem. That's a you problem. And it's really interesting. I think people can put a lot of blame on the organizations. I'm saying that there's definitely work there, but there's also a lot of work that needs to happen in the rewiring of people's brains because of the way we've been brought up from other generations, that people were brought up to just go to work, put your head down, get on with it, not say anything. And maybe that was okay back then. But different generations went through different things. We're talking post-war and all of the things that they had to do to survive and get through it. Now it's different. But unfortunately, it's been passed on to generations to just be a doormat and to be okay with certain things and to be on all the time. And it's okay to do overtime and have your phone switched on, all these things. It's not. And I think that puts a lot of stress on people. But then also, like you touched on, Lockie, a lot of people turn to coping mechanisms. They don't want to face how they feel. They don't want to face their emotions. They want to bury it in scrolling on their phone, on drinking alcohol, on partying, on hanging out with the wrong people, on watching the news, which is just filling our brains with even more global stress now, which is not normal. We shouldn't know what's happening on the other side of the world. Many years ago, we wouldn't actually know. And that's putting a lot of stress. We went through massive global stress only a few years ago, if you think about it. And that's still having an effect on people's nervous systems. So I think there's a lot of work that people need to do within themselves, but also an organization. Looking after your health, in general, like if your internal world, in terms of health, in terms of sleep, food, nutrition, movement, mindset, nervous system is good, you can increase your stress threshold. So it takes a lot longer for you to be able to for you to be able to knock over the other side and go, I'm not coping anymore. It takes you so much more. You can have more capacity to do more, hold more responsibility, lead bigger teams without getting to that point of burnout. If your internal world, if you're already on shaky ground, you can't really do much with that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like building a house. Like, you're not going to go and build a house on sand, where the water's going to come up to it. You're going to build that house on a solid foundation. And I think that's at WPWI, we work with the business, but then we also work with the individual as well.
Love that.
To ensure that they are setting themselves up on that solid ground. We implement a wellbeing strategy alongside inside almost their business strategy, but then we're also working with the individuals at the same time, because we believe that empowered people create empowered organizations. So if we can empower this person, that they're going to show up better. They're going to do better work. They're going to be more productive. They're going to show higher performance. They're going to want to stay at this workplace because they feel empowered and they are empowered.
Yeah. And I think putting your health first, talking about healthy habits and all these sorts of things are normal in the workplace, instead of talking about how busy you are, how much work you've got to do, how stressed you are, how you've got to take this work home, how it's affecting your family time and all these sorts of things. That becomes the norm in an environment. Of course, that's a stressed out workplace. Instead of going, hey, I actually had time off and I turned my notifications off and I felt amazing. And I did this breathwork session, or I did a sauna session, or I'm now starting up running. Like, there's just a completely different dynamic.
And it's just, Lockie, I know that your audience is a lot of, men and potentially even business owners in the room. When we take a break from our own business, we switch off all of our notifications and we're just connecting with ourselves, connecting with each other, connecting with the environment around us. We make more money.
Yes.
The business always thrives better when we take that step back. So imagine if your employees, if there's any CEOs listening, take that step back. What's going to happen to your business? All I can see it is projecting upwards.
That's the mic drop right there. So firstly, like, you guys explained that so well. Obviously, you've got the personal or the person involved, but then the workplace. And I think it's important to empower both, but then also bring the synergies together, which is what you guys do with the work that you do to create that thriving workplace. And obviously, if it's not happening, there will be individuals out there who are suffering with their mental health, and their lifestyle might be falling apart because of work stress, financial stress, all the stresses that you mentioned earlier. And same with the business. If you don't have great culture and a resilient team and everything for them to thrive, it's like your profits aren't going to be as good. And I did have the stat, but I can't find it now, of how much Australian businesses are losing every year because of workplace burnout. Is crazy. So it makes sense to slow down, in my opinion, work with someone like you guys and get the strategies in place to uplift not only your team and your people, but your business and organization as a whole. There was one question that came up for me when you guys were talking there, and it was when you were mentioning, like, you turn your phone off, your notifications off, and you take time and your business grows. One thing I personally struggle with is taking that time away. Through my mind, I'm like, oh, what if I lose momentum, or what if I become irrelevant, or what if I miss something? And that is one of the, I guess, the thought processes that goes through my mind. And I then just convince myself to keep working. And it happens more often than not. And it's something that I'd love to be able to stop doing. Is there anything that you guys have found that can help with that in a way?
Can I comment on that?
I got a question first.
Okay.
What if we were just to reframe that question? You just said, what if I lose momentum? What if we were to flip that around and you change it to, what if I could gain momentum by taking a couple of days off now? If I just paused, take a breath and go, okay, let's go again. I could almost guarantee, and I am going to guarantee it, you're going to have more energy and more momentum afterwards. If you close that, say, by the end of this week, I'm going to get all my work done. I'm going to get all the tasks done, because once that's done, I've got a couple of days off where we're going to go away for a couple of days. Then when you come back the following week, you'll be more motivated to keep going. You will get better downloads. You will get,
Lockie's
better
looking
ideas.
so resistant right now. He's hyperventilating.
I'm just like, how easy you changed it with the reframe. In my mind, I'm like, yeah, it makes sense. It's like, just be optimistic and test it, because we're always testing stuff, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's going to be, I'm always, when I hear someone say it, I will always reframe something. And, just like you just did, it's like, oh shit, maybe.
But it also calls me on my bullshit. That's what I didn't like. I think when, Lauren, you're like, I look resistant. It's like, yeah, well, you took away that excuse that I had to keep working.
Well, I think it's an old school mentality that's been passed down. Like, once again, I keep saying that, and it's just interesting because it's something that I have on and off battled with too, Lockie. So I totally get where you're coming from. And I think it's that high performing mindset, but it's also an old school mindset of 1 hour equals 1 hour of productivity. And it's a load of BS because you keep going, right? It's like a car and you keep driving. One day that car's going to break down. It's going to take you so much longer to repair to then be able to get back on the track and on the road and keep going again. It's, if you keep going in your business, you're going to burn out one day. Then you're going to lose momentum for 3 months or more, Lockie. That's the problem. So if you have micro breaks and times of recovery, you'll prevent that from happening. So that's one. Also, two, with the mindset, I find that when we think, what if I lose momentum? What if I lose an opportunity? What if I miss out on something? That's scarcity. That's a scarcity mindset. That's the belief that if I take 10 minutes away, there's opportunities coming that I'm missing. And I've actually really worked on this recently. And I think with the business mentor that we have now, she really teaches that the right opportunities come at the right time. And I do believe that. I feel like you speak to the right person at the right time and it all starts to align. If that opportunity is not right for you because your nervous system can't take it, maybe your life's so busy right now that you can only handle so much. You've got a plate, you can only fill it with so much food, right? And if you start to overfill it, then you're going to spill out. It's going to affect your relationships, your business, your money, your income, and all these other things. So just accept that that opportunity is perfect, but I don't want any more. And it's like us with business right now. It's like, okay, we're busy planning the big event. We've got these other smaller events. We've got a few other things happening. That's probably my plate almost full. Like there's only a little bit more that we can have right now. We've got some speaking engagements. You're emceeing a lot at the moment. That's it. And we're happy with that. And I think it's not having that scarcity mindset of like, I'm going to miss out. And, you know, there's already enough for enough people. The right opportunity will come at the right time. Your nervous system reflects on the opportunities that come in. If you're in a scarcity nervous system, if your nervous system's shaky, you won't attract the opportunities in the first place. So you need to breathe, you need to rest, then you can expand. I think that's where some of the success that we're having recently is because we have been able to decompress our nervous system, regulate. So because you're going a bit woo-woo, but your nervous system, you know, your frequency goes up when you rest and you're in more of a love, joy, fulfillment mindset and feeling rather than scarcity. Oh, I need. It's like, okay, that's a low vibration. That is dense frequency, right?
Yeah. And I suppose, you know, we talk about seasons a lot. And even in the, you know, the business world, they talk, oh yeah, I'm in a sprint season at the moment. I'm sprinting. My question to anyone who is in a season of sprinting is, okay, when does that season come to an end? You know, we don't have summer all year round. We don't have winter all year round for a reason. You know, you cannot be sprinting for 365 days of the year. But if you're going into a sprint season, my biggest advice is, okay, when does this sprint season end? You know, right now, I feel like we're just about to start a new sprint where we're going into. We've had a couple of days where it's okay, we've gone back to a fast walk, maybe a jog, and now we're ready to pick it up again, you know, ready to pick up the sprint, ready for the next season. But is this season going to last for the rest of the year? No, it's not. It might last for 30 days. It might last for 60 days max. And then we'll taper back down, back to a jog, back to a fast walk, whatever that is.
And I'm not overly big on sprints like I used to be, but I think I'm more about sustainable growth. And I think keep running and stopping. It's not sustainable. I'd rather enjoy the journey rather than just keep going and pushing. It feels like pushing a boulder uphill. I'd rather just really enjoy it, attract what we're meant to attract, keep consistent and showing up. But that's different to like rushing and sprinting all the time. I feel like sustainable growth. And I think that's what's helped us in the 2 years of business and why we're seeing the growth and momentum now is because of the consistency and we didn't burn ourselves out and we had to stop. And I think people go in this cycle of like, boom, 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 push, burnout, stop.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I need to recover. I need to take 2 weeks off. I need to go on holiday. I need a break. You know what I mean?
But it's all about becoming aware, you know, if you are in that sprint season, okay, now it's that time to slow down. It's not stopping. It's, you know, we're still walking, essentially. We're still going at a jog speed, but it's slowing down because that is not sustainable, like you said, that sprint.
Within that awareness you built, how did you, I guess, gain an understanding of how big your plate is? Because I could imagine there's some blokes or people listening to this and they're like, my plate's never ending. I can deal with it. Even though, because their stress threshold, maybe they've been running at that, you know, burnout point for decades because they've never learned about rest and recovery. So that's just them. How would you know when you're sort of getting to that point of burnout? Like if someone's on the edge of it now, what would be, I guess, a way to identify that and some steps to recovery, so to speak?
I think like we spoke about looking at your habits. So, you know, how do you act when the doors are closed? Are you scrolling on your phone? Are you drinking alcohol? What are you talking about? What are you listening to? Because that sort of reflects on what's happening in your nervous system and internal world. What are you trying to avoid? Are you suppressing something? Because when you are go, and you think that I thought this only a couple of years ago. I'm so capable, I can handle anything. And it's like, oh, actually, I feel quite, you know, and then it catches up with you. And only about 8 months ago, I was suffering from panic attacks and anxiety again. And I was like, whoa, where did this come from? It just hit me like a bus. It was so random. And I thought, well, that's really interesting. And it's because I thought, I can just keep going. I can handle this. My plate's huge. And then it will hit you all of a sudden with something. And I think the signs are that you don't switch off very easily. You don't take moments to regulate your emotions or even tap into how they feel. You're always scrolling on your phone. You're addicted to noise. You're watching TV. You don't like being in silence. Maybe you're getting a lot of headaches, mood swings, those sorts of things.
For me, it's the sleep. I'll know when I'm going, okay, my plate's too full now, because my sleep will start to go off. It'll take forever to fall asleep. I'll wake up at weird hours of the night where it's not, I don't need to go to the bathroom or anything. I just wake up and I'm thinking. Or I'll wake up and I'm on and I'm thinking about, I've got to do this, this, and this, this, and this. My to-do list is so big. That for me is a big sign that, okay, there's probably too much on my plate right now. What can I get rid of? And it was just this week where I thought, okay, I've got to get rid of something. So I let go of something that I've been doing for 11 plus years. And
Wow.
three days later, I'm thinking, like 3 days post that, it's like, actually, I feel lighter already. And it was just that one thing that's always in the back of the mind. It was literally I would do this thing 1 hour a week, supporting a local radio station on the Gold Coast. And as I get rid of that, my head is so much more clear now already. It's just that 1 hour, but I know, okay, I've got to do that. 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 Now it's gone. It's like, oh, that's easier. So it was just removing that one little thing that's on my plate. Big step, but it's amazing.
I did that recently. I think it was 2 weeks ago now, where I shut down my online academy. It was something similar to you that I've done for 7 years now, but I was starting to get really resentful for having to do it. It wasn't serving a purpose in my life anymore. And once again, I was sort of 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and wasn't showing up. And I'd resisted shutting it down for 4 months, 5 months. And then it just got to the point where I was like, what am I doing? Like, this is, I guess we speak about energy and vibration. Like, I was just becoming so bitter and so had such a low vibration around it that it wasn't valuable to anyone. And then I was able to shut it down. And literally the moment that I did the final call, I was just like free. It's like I'd taken this 10-kilo weight vest off, and I could now run in peace. What do you feel are some of the biggest blind spots that leaders have when it comes to workplace well-being?
Yeah, I think what Lauren was saying before, it was, the 1 hour of work is 1 hour of productivity. These days, it's not. COVID showed us that big time. Working from home is, you can get a lot more done, but there's also a lot more distractions. Yes, I understand that.
Different distractions.
But if I went into an office and that you told me to sit at my desk for 9 hours or 8 hours, whatever it is, and work, I'm going to be not productive at all, because I'm going to go, oh, well, I got 8 hours here. My to-do list is a long, cool. I'm going to scroll. I'm going to scroll on Facebook for a little bit on my computer so it looks like I'm working. Or it's, I'm going to go online shopping, whatever it is, because I know I can get all this done within this 8 hours. But if you tell me, okay, you've got this list to do in 4 hours, okay, I'm on, because I know after that 4 hours, I'm free. I can do what I like.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest shift at the moment that we're seeing going through as well.
Yeah, I think the organizations that are thriving are recognizing that, and, switching to things like, a 4-day work week or something. We've spoken to organizations recently that are doing that, and some are in fear of that. They're like, how can you still produce the right amount of money? How can you maintain your client base and all those sorts of questions? But then the other organizations that have implemented it, they're like, it works so well because we've cut the bullshit. People are not getting up to waste time chatting to their colleagues over coffee. They're not wasting time walking to the bathroom every 2 seconds because they're bored. They're not scrolling or wasting time on their computer. They're cracking on and getting on with it because they want that extra day off. And they're seeing that the productivity has actually gone up and the recovery is longer. So then, of course, they come back on a Monday feeling more refreshed. So I think it's having that mindset, like you said, of switching the 1 hour equals 1 hour of productive work, because it's not. And like you said, it takes 23 minutes to come back on track when you're distracted.
Yeah.
And offices create a lot of distraction. I actually hear people work better when they're at home sometimes because they're not getting all the noise from the office, the tables next to them. They're on phone calls or whatever, and you can hear what's happening. Yeah, a lot of distractions in the office.
I think another thing that leaders have maybe dropped the ball on, and in fact, I'm not saying maybe, I think they have. I'm going to throw it out there. They have. is mini micro behaviors. And what I mean by that is tonality. How are they speaking to their staff? Are they coming at a calm, positive vibe, or are they yelling at them saying, we've got to get this done. We've got to get this done. And that could come back to that scarcity mindset. Little things like, are they praising their employees? Whether it's just through an email saying, hey, great job this week, whether it's in a staff meeting, whether it's, employee of the month are very tokenistic, I find.
Mm-hmm.
But for some, that's what works. And even you could even go right down to response times and emails. If someone sends, an email, is the boss sending that off instantly, like a reactive, or is it the opposite of that? Are they taking way too long to respond to a request? So there's that happy medium as well when it comes to emails, but it's those mini micro behaviors I feel like leaders have dropped for sure, causing that blind spot.
I'd like to add one more. I know we could do heaps of these, but I think, leaders and organizations in general really think that the culture will look after itself, or everyone's happy here, making assumptions, not actually knowing how their workers are feeling, what's working, what's not working, what needs to be done, not asking those big questions, and just assuming that everything's fine, not measuring anything, like I said, not having those chats, and just assuming everyone's happy here, so the culture is fine. The culture just happens on its own and it's all good, not actually doing anything about it.
Yeah. Or it's, if there's silence on no one said anything, so everything must be good. No news is good news, as they say. But even like if you've sent out an engagement survey to employees, for example, and you get 60% back, you might be thinking, oh, fantastic, 60% have responded, everything's great. What's happening to that other 40%? You've got 40% of your staff who have decided not to respond to that survey. That could be 40% of your staff who are ready to get up and leave because they've just had enough. So again, it's flipping it and reframing little things.
They don't trust that the organization is actually going to do anything with the answers anyway. That's what happens a lot of time. We hear they go, well, what's the point of me filling out this survey or answering their questions? Because it's just a token and tick box approach. They won't do anything with it. Nothing ever changes. So why would I waste my time and actually speak up about it? So that's also where they're missing the spot, because we do audits and get into the workplace and find the gaps where they are with productivity and well-being. But we say to them, you have to explain to your staff why you're doing it, the importance, have a proper discussion before actually implementing it. And then at the end, you have to stick to your word. You have to do something about the feedback and tell your workers what you're planning to do and take them on the journey with you, instead of just doing it, ticking the box, moving on, not doing anything, because it's not changing anything. And then you're losing the trust. It's actually detrimental to the workplace.
It's wild. And there's some great points there. I actually was looking at like case studies of big businesses, especially that were implementing things. And as you mentioned, there were 4 like companies that had introduced 4-day work weeks. I know from speaking to some of my mates who have businesses with a lot of employees that they're a bit resistant because, whether it's, they're like traditionally working 7 days a week. It's like, how does that work? And for me, it's like, we'll introduce maybe a staff roster or look at certain things like that. But even another one was Lend-Lease. I was reading about they'd introduced quarterly wellbeing days, and as a result, like they had a heap of data which saw increased engagement and performance. And it makes me think, like, why aren't more leaders and businesses at least testing it, giving themselves a 90-day or 180-day test of it? Because as you've said a number of times, Jason, it's like reframing it. Yeah, that style of thing that you're testing may not work, but what if it does? And what if your business does become more productive? And Brené Brown has a great quote that I think is directed at the leaders there. It's like, we can choose courage or we can choose comfort, but we can't have both. And when you're looking to implement change and implement growth, there is an element of risk. And that means you need to step into that comfort there. But I'd love to talk about the event that you guys have coming up in September. I've got so much value. Like, I'm amped up from the conversation that we've had. And I know this is just sort of scratching the surface of what people can learn at the event. Can you give us a rundown of what's going to happen?
I'm so excited for this event.
What can we say without giving too much away?
Yeah, without giving too much away.
Obviously, Lachie, Stuart is one of our amazing keynote speakers at the conference, and I'm really excited and pumped to have you there, Lachie. It was interesting when we interviewed you last year on our podcast. As soon as we came off, I was like, he's there. He's going to be one of the keynote speakers 100%, because you give so much value, and I think you have so much wisdom and experience working with men, but also working with different people on resilience, mindset, and building people up to reach their potential. So
leadership as well.
I'm really excited for you to obviously dive into that, but we've got other people coming talking about emotional intelligence and how you can increase your emotional capacity to be able to hold bigger teams, hold yourself, attract more wealth and more abundance, and all those sorts of things that person will go through. I haven't actually announced that person yet.
Look, by the time this podcast comes out,
It
it's
will-
being announced tomorrow.
That's true. Okay,
Yeah, so it'll be
I
there.
wasn't really sure when we were announcing her. Jessica Cameron, so she'll be speaking on that. She's been on our potty as well. She's really awesome. She's worked with so many leadership teams and corporates around Australia on building that emotional capacity. And that's such a new way of thinking and it works. So that's exciting to bring that in. But you can continue.
I think what makes, because leaders might see this as another conference. I've attended conferences all year. I walk away with some knowledge, but yeah, okay. This isn't just you come and a death by PowerPoint. This is where experts come to give you practical strategies. Experts who have actually walked the walk and they talk the talk. It's not just theory. It's a practical session where we'll get you to do things in the room. So then you can go into your workplace the next day and go, this is what we're doing because I've seen it works. It works because of this. We give you practical,
tangible outcomes,
but also the reasons why you should be doing that. So I think there's that mix of both. It's not just a full day of information. It's a full day of transformation, I suppose.
Yeah, we really wanted this to be a different event. So like Jay said, it's not like next speaker. We just keep going. We're going to cram your brain with so much knowledge that you walk away overwhelmed and then you create inaction. We're going to give you what you need and give you exactly a roadmap so you can actually implement that into your life and into your organization. If you're a business owner or even a sole trader, this is good for you because you're going to learn so many tips on mindset, resilience, emotional intelligence, mental health, all those sorts of things. But it's also good for organizations and people running teams because how can you lead a team if you don't have these sorts of skills? How are you going to maintain leading high-performing, highly effective teams and actually keep them in your organization if you cannot regulate yourself, show up as a better version and lead them with capacity and resilience?
Now, this event is probably not going to be for everyone. I'm going to put that out there. It is not for everyone. If you're thinking, I like the way that we do things, I like, the traditional method, then this event is probably not going to be for you because we're creating change makers in the room. We're creating people who want to look after the next generation to ensure when they come into the workforce that they can be seen, heard, and valued. That your employees, perhaps even when you go back into the next day, you can go, I actually value you. I can actually see that you do the hard work here. And, last week you said this bit of feedback, I'm taking that on board and I'm going to do something about it today. We don't want those people in the room who are going, yeah, that was good, but not do anything about it. We're creating change makers to make Australia a better place to work.
Yeah, that was a perfect mic drop moment. It's got me excited because you've just given us who it's for, who it's not for. And for those who are listening, it's the National Workplace Wellbeing Conference 2025. It is Wednesday, September 17th in Brisbane. And one thing that I would also suggest to people is, for me, you mentioned at the very beginning, Jason, it's like we're always the sixth of the five people we spend the most time around. If you want to elevate your social group and if you hang around business owners, entrepreneurs, even people who lead teams, whatever that looks like, invite them because people are always looking for the opportunity to get better. Yet a lot of people are either too busy to be able to put their head up to, I guess, have a quick breath and see what's going on around them. And the opportunity that you can compound your growth by coming with friends or coming with colleagues, because when you leave, you then get to continue the discussion. You get to hear, I guess, what you guys have done really well as well is like the constant reframes, the perspectives and the insights that you don't get when you just go, maybe you do it when you go alone. But for me, when I always take a buddy, it's like I'll talk about it over dinner afterwards and just continue going, oh, I didn't even actually think about that. And so the value that you take away compounds. I really encourage people to consider that if you're considering coming along. And obviously, all of us would love to see you there. I'm going to be there all day because I would know that I'm going to get so much value from what you guys are presenting and what the other speakers are going to deliver because, like everyone who's listening to this, I want to be better. I want to be a better leader. I want to create better cultures. And there's always something that I can learn and implement in my own life.
Amazing.
Yeah, so good.
Lauren, Jason, thank you guys so much for coming on. Before we wrap up, is there one last bit of advice that you would love to leave our audience with? And if not, what would be one last bit of advice you would have given to yourself when you were, I guess, in that burnt out phase?
I think there's so much. To pick one, I think honestly, take the time for yourself, reflect, and ask yourself, where do I want to be in 5-10 years' time? Do I want to be in this spot where I'm absolutely drained? Or do I want to be thriving where I'm absolutely living my best life? So take that time to stop, reflect, and really think, where do I want to be in 5-10 years' time? What state do I want to be in? That's going to be mine.
I think one thing is to know that it's not permanent, that everything's constantly changing. So I think that gives people hope if they're in a dark space right now. And then the other one, I think, is the power of environment, keeping that in your mind, because that's when things really change for us, when we change who we're hanging around, what conversations we're having. Because, yeah, like we said, it's huge. It will change how your nervous system is, how you're feeling, how you're showing up.
Awesome. And where can everyone find you? Once again, you guys have a podcast. Obviously, the event's coming up. What are the links? And for everyone listening, if you are driving or you're doing something else at the same time, I'll have all the links in the show notes for you.
No, amazing. You can find us both on LinkedIn. We're both quite active on there. So it's just Lauren McGee or Jason Marshall. Or you can jump in if you want to listen to another podcast, another great podcast. Keep listening to Lachie Stuart's podcast, of course. But if you want to jump over to the Thriving Workplace podcast as well, where we interviewed Lachie Stuart it was actually just before you embarked on your 58 marathon journey. So it was really cool to see those insights before that as well. So you can go and listen to that. Or you can find details about the conference on our website. It's just www.wpwi.org.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for your time. It's been extremely valuable for me, and I look forward to going back through and taking some more notes and implementing some change in my life.
Awesome.
Oh, amazing. Thanks for having us.